Hey guys, Chris Haddon and Jason Balin here with the Private Lenders Podcast, sponsored as always by our lending company, hardmoneybankers.com, and our mastermind group for private lenders, hardmoneymastermind.com. Okay, so recently we've been taking some questions from the people in the mastermind group from our email list about the things that they would like to learn more about, the different aspects of hard money lending at different sizes works differently. So we have a couple good questions here from Jeff and from a couple other people I'm going to take a look at, and we are going to run through these. So it really does, this model really does work well at a few different sizes. Like you can have a few $1,000,000 on the street and have a one-person operation, and it could be your money, could be investor money, or a mix. And the bottom line numbers based on the work goes in and the money that comes out works pretty well. And it can get a little bit bigger. We don't want it to get too big, and we could talk about that, but you need different stuff when you have 10 loans outstanding versus 100 loans outstanding and in between. And so we're going to walk through some of those steps. And then also that is related to some of the questions that came in from Jeff about the team that you should have at a different size and the different types of software and back office operations at different sizes. And also we're going to touch on some capital related stuff too. All right, let's jump to some questions. I'm looking at my phone here. Okay, so managing and running the office/employees for maximum effectiveness and efficiency. You want to run through a little bit about what your team will look like at different sizes?
Okay, so think about it like this. If you're a one man or woman operation, or you have multiple people, these are typically the roles. So you have some sort of loan originator, right? Somebody going, talking to borrowers on a regular basis. So you have an originator, then you have some sort of loan processor, then you have an underwriter, and a lot of these overlap. But let's just throw them out. Then we'll tell you how we did it when we started, and then how we do it now. So loan originator, processor, underwriter. Then you have some sort of back office, like accountant or controller or CFO technically, right? So someone that manages the servicing portfolio. Then you have investor relations, someone communicating with your capital investors, raising capital and things like that. Then you have some sort of property inspector, somebody going out to the properties, doing construction inspections, things like that. And then maybe a loan officer or sales associate or marketing person, something like that. So when we started, think about it like this, front half and back half. So my responsibilities were origination, processing, underwriting, checking out properties, let's just say inspections. And then Chris's was, accountant, working with our capital investors, accounting, bookkeeping, managing our loan portfolios, working with defaulted loans, things like that. We've always shared the responsibilities of marketing and trying to make it rain and bring in deal flow, because that's a big role. But, it depends on how you want to do it. I mean, I do the origination and the underwriting simultaneously, like that happens together. I believe that somebody in your organization, especially when you're smaller, should be doing that. We don't really have, at one point we had an admin answering the phones, but we never really needed to, right? Like if someone's calling you, it's about a deal. That's typically, they have a loan that they need. That's about it. So, it's not like, oh, hey, can I talk to Chris? It's like, well, if you want to talk to Chris, you should have his cell phone number type of thing. So most of the time, everyone has a direct phone line. We don't really need an admin answering the phones, but a lot of the roles overlap. I mean, we're a small business. We have about $35 million or so deployed at any given time. 4 or 5 W-2 employees, not including partnerships we have in other markets, but everyone's hands-on. They overlap. They help with tasks. We have one technical controller and then one accountant or bookkeeper. And, the bookkeeper, they overlap with some mailings that we do, mailing out t-shirts, postage, admin stuff, things like that.
Yeah. So all those roles that Jason outlined before, the various people, we probably said about 10 different roles, were all done by the 2 people on this podcast at the beginning. And that's how it starts, right? And we were figuring out as we go along and things develop in terms of people and software systems, everything else. But it really, and we know people to this day who have a 1-person operation doing all that stuff and doing a couple loans a month. And oftentimes that's going to be their own money, and it works fine there. But now we're about 10 people, give or take, and those are all different roles. Like, I still handle the investor relations, and I oversee our controller who manages the loan portfolio, and our accountant bookkeeper who manages the operating accounts. And that still works in essence in the same way. But then there's some more people on the origination side as other partners have come in different markets that Jason works with. And then also our portfolio manager, which is like a more built out version of a loan processor. That's a different person. And the property inspectors in each market, those are different people now. We don't do them all ourselves anymore. So, and the way the systems have been built out over time is that you start pretty manual in terms of, you're doing a letter of intent, like a loan quote, and you're typing that out into a document and you send it out. And same stuff when you're relaying loan information to your attorney to do loan docs. Like, that's kind of a manual process. And then over time you can build that out. Like, we have tried out a couple different origination systems that we didn't think worked great for hard money. They're more for regular mortgage industry, and they can do a lot more stuff than what we might necessarily need. So we started building out our own clean system using Google Docs and spreadsheets and stuff like that. On the back end of things, if you're servicing, 5, 10, 15 loans, you can just do it on spreadsheets and QuickBooks, right? Manual calculations, cut your checks. And that's the way we did it for the first few years before we started putting up some money for proper systems. And now we have a great back end system called the Mortgage Office, pretty well known in the industry, that does all kinds of cool stuff, but it costs money, right? So you don't necessarily want to do that unless you have enough loans outstanding and most likely the right person in place to run that. So the first hire, this is something that what comes up with our consulting clients frequently. It's like, what should the first hire be? Say they're a one-man operation. And we typically say that it should be a combination of a loan processor, accountant, somebody who knows how to prep the files, get everything in there that you need to close a deal, relay the information to the attorney for docs, and then a loan closes, money comes back, and docs come back, and they know how to cut the checks, process the deal, make sure the money goes to the right place, and it's all tracked. Like, that would be the first hire, I would say. And that can take you for a ways. Like, you can have a one owner and a processor / accountant for a good sized portfolio, That's
right.
Like,
probably a $10 million portfolio. I mean,
I would say so.
A good amount of business. And that's probably about that size. And, we've dabbled with everything. At one point we had a full-time business development sales guy. We've had multiple 1099 salespeople in the past. We've had part-time bookkeepers, full-time bookkeepers, front desk admins, marketing, an in-house marketing person, outsourced marketing agency. Like, we've tried it all.
We've tried it all. Yeah, we have tried it all.
But also, like, let's think about this in general. Like, some people want to always, what's the term? Like, we're all about being a bottom line revenue, right? That's like all we care about is bottom line revenue, bottom line income. Now, that doesn't mean that we want to do unnecessary tasks. Just to keep our bottom line numbers down because we don't want to pay anybody. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with, like, we're not out there trying to just scale, grow. We're trying to find the number that makes the most sense with the least amount of risk to be the most profitable, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, we've tried different things. Obviously we're improving every day, right? We continue to try to improve with things, but it depends on who you are and what your personality types are. If you're a control freak and you're an analytical type of person, and I get that, you're probably going to hold on to the servicing and the bookkeeping and the accounting, which is a very hands-on, labor-intensive role. Unfortunately, it just is. And if you're that type of person, it's going to be hard for you to control that. On the other side, if you're a real high I personality type and a very salesy person, you're going to be a people person and talkative. You're probably going to be the one that wants to talk to everybody all the time. And then you might lax the ability to, button up everything on the back end. So you got to know who you are and what you want to do.
That's a good point.
As well. But I'll tell you that, like, we're always, like, I would say I'm going to define in a second the 3 highest level roles that that Chris and I do collectively. And we believe that they're the most important things. Number 1, marketing to find new opportunities. We don't really market for capital anymore. We used to when we started, but marketing for deals, right? Like that's how this business is made, right? So like we do that. And then I do underwriting and risk analyzing the assets, and Chris does investor relations and works with our capital investors. Like those, I think, are the 3 most important things. Everything else kind of works the way out. Now, obviously, we manage all the employees and we have our hands involved. We know what's going on in every single loan we've ever done, but those are where we spend our, the high level, the majority of our day.
Yeah, and those are the things that shouldn't be delegated. That should stay with the people at the top of the organization. Okay, cool. A couple other quick questions just to roll through, and we're going to talk about. Okay, so Jeff asked software used for payroll. We use Intuit, and also a follow-up question on that about tracking all the information about our employees. Intuit as well. You want to talk a little bit about pay scale for a couple of the different roles that go into the hard money company, as we have done it. Like if you're talking about admin person, that accountant / processor role, and salespeople too.
Sure. Yeah, let's start with front end, and then we'll work our way to the back end. Now, we've obviously learned, you get what you pay for. We also have learned that full-time, it typically has worked better for us than part-time. We've also learned that company culture is more important than skill sets. Those are a few big takeaways that we've got in place. And I also can say that less experience is sometimes better, unless it's bookkeeping, obviously, or accounting, but like lack of experience is fine. We've had a lot more success when we've hired salespeople. We've had more success with somebody outside the mortgage industry than inside the mortgage industry, typically because a lot of the people inside the mortgage industry, including ourselves, retain it related to expectations, how you communicate, how deals go. Like, so again, you can go either way. Like it's an easy pick to be like, oh, this guy's a mortgage broker. This girl's a really good mortgage producer. I'll bring them into my hard money lending company. They'll kill it because they know everybody. And that might be the case, but it's something to think about. So again, anytime we've ever brought anyone into a sales role, it's been 100% commission. Maybe there's been a small draw, whatever our legal requirements were for a draw, $2,000 a month that goes towards their commission. But for the most part, it's commission based. We've had sales guys that have made well over $100,000. In there over the years as well. But it is commission based. And we typically would break it up between if they were in-house leads or self-generated leads. We've changed things over the years. It's tough as you grow because it's hard to determine which one's which or to track that.
True.
But it depends. It depends. But I will tell you, a salesperson is hard to find. And the reason why, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, the reason they're hard to find is most hard money lending companies, and I'm not talking about like large institutional backed hard money lending companies. I'm talking about in hard money lending companies that lend, $1 million of your own money to a company like ours that lend $35, $40 million of capital, like that size. A lot of them, it's hard for people to find the right salesperson because number one, they don't want to front them enough money up front, to get their pipeline ramped up. And then on the other side, it's hard to find a good person unless you can guarantee them $100,000. Like, True. and you find someone. It's a hard position to fill. You wouldn't think it would be, but it would because you're not going to put somebody in a position they're not going to make a ton of money overnight. It's not like they typically have a book of business that they're bringing over. I mean, I've talked to lots of hard money lender companies throughout the years. And it's like, oh well, I'll just bring in this part-time person, and the part-time person doesn't work great doing it that way because they're not fully focused. And really, the best way to do it is every marketing campaign you're doing, it's, hey, call Jason, call this number. So it's not like, hey, call our main number and then we'll parse you to the person. Like you got to brand them as the front man, or woman. And it's
it has been
challenging.
Tricky. Yeah, it has been challenging, that commission sales role. And that's why we don't currently have any of, well, I guess technically we do have one in that role, but we've tend to focus as we've expanded on having partners in a couple different markets who it's a larger role than just a W-2 commission person. And we found that to work pretty well. But then there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that setup, not really within the scope of this question, but also just to knock out a couple of other questions. So if you're looking at that, some of your back office people like controller, accountant, loan processor, if that's a combination or if those are separate, these tend to be pretty professional folks who have college degrees, that have experience, and are in that salary range of maybe anywhere from like 50 to 80 grand, depending on where you are in the country and what that role will typically. But we've definitely found, like we said at the beginning, that you get what you pay for, and it's better to, in important roles like that, to have qualified people who command a good amount of salary and that you can trust to be competent and do an effective job, as opposed to doing it on the cheap and then having to watch somebody and then they make mistakes, and like that tends to work.
It's real capital, your owner investor capital that's on the hook. You can't have mistakes in this stuff. And typically this size business, you don't have too much quality control besides yourself on it. So you put a good system and a good process, and you start small, and you ramp you go slow. I mean, the worst thing you could possibly do is ramp up too fast. You go and
do that.
And you go slow and you hire the right person. But company culture is the most important thing. I mean, if you have somebody who's good and knows the business, but like they're just going to clash with everybody in the office and make it miserable, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And the good thing is, and this is why Chris and I preach this a lot, is like between the two of us, we've been involved in every aspect of our business, and we were for a long period of time. Until we hired our first person. And after we hired our first person, year after year, we probably continued to hire another person until a few years back when we didn't need anyone, any new hires, as we were done kind of the ramping up growth process. But like we can train them with, owner's manuals and process flows because we've been there. So, and I'm not stating that's the case in all businesses, and I'm not obviously looking down on a business that doesn't have that in place, but I think that's helpful, knowing that like I'm not going to ask anyone to do something that we haven't already done ourselves, and chances are they're going to take what we tell them and reinvent it and do it their way, which they should, but at least they're going to get the basics of exactly what's supposed to be done, and then they're going to change it up to their liking to hopefully do it better.
Yep. Hope that answers Jeff's questions. Always happy to follow up on back office people, software, stuff like that comes up frequently. And then I just want to answer a final question someone else in the mastermind group had about the profile of capital investors in terms of, what are most of our capital investors look like that should, in essence, be targets for people who are raising capital. So a couple things on that. One, they're closer to you than you think. They're not just, some super wealthy, like Wall Street guys who you have no connection to. It's not really like that. So first of all, they're either within the first or second degree of your network. That means you know them or somebody that you know knows them. And it doesn't have to be any further away than that. We don't do any marketing. We never did anything like cold. Never thought that was the best way for raising capital, and still believe that. And also, they don't need to be whales. Like most of our capital investors are in that maybe they have 100K to 500K investable capital, not like several million. Some of them do, and especially over time, you get up to somebody has a few $1 million outstanding with you, and that's totally cool. But we're not talking about super whales here. Oftentimes, these folks have real estate experience or have been in the finance world, some kind of business professional usually, and they understand what we do. They understand just that maybe they're familiar with our business already, or they're not, but they're able to grasp it very quickly and why it makes sense. Why it makes sense as an investment. And then I'm not going to get too much into the personality types. We get more in depth on that in other trainings in the mastermind group. But if you're familiar with the DISC personality profile, we tend to have the most success with the Ds and the S's, and the I's and the C's not as much. And I'm not going to dive too much into that one right now, but I just want to hammer home the point that these people that work well in our model are closer to you than you think. And they're not super whales that most people might have that conception when it comes to raising capital in general, that you're talking about somebody with like tens of millions of net worth. Typically not the case in our business, right? So cool. Yeah, those are the questions for today. If you guys have any more questions that we can address on a future monthly training in the mastermind or here on the podcast, email us, Chris@hardmoneybankers.com or Jason@hardmoneybankers.com, and we will see you next time.